By 1866, the Central Pacific's Chinese workforce had swelled to over 10,000 men. The railroad had reached the formidable summit of the Sierra Nevada, a place of unimaginable cold and monumental labor. Crocker was now convinced. "They are the best laborers we have ever had," he declared to the skeptical press. "They will do what no other man will dare." What Crocker dared them to do was tunnel through the mountains in a blizzard. The winter of 1866-1867 was one of the fiercest in memory. Snow began to fall in early October and did not cease for 5 months. Drifts piled 30, 40, even 60 feet high. The CP faced total paralysis. Every day of delay cost them thousands of dollars in interest and federal subsidies. Crocker's answer was maniacal yet effective. He ordered the construction of miles of wooden snow sheds and, more astonishingly, hundreds of feet of snow tunnels over the track just to keep the work moving. His greatest gamble, however, was within the mountain itself. At the summit, the work was concentrated on the longest and most critical tunnel, the Summit Tunnel. The Chinese laborers were forced to live like moles. Giant shafts were dug down through 50 feet of snow to reach the mouths of the tunnels. Workers entered these shafts and lived for weeks underground, the tunnel mouths barricaded against the snow and wind. They lived in darkness, sleeping in shifts in cramped, frigid barracks dug directly into the granite, lit only by flickering whale oil lamps. The air quality was a slow poison, a thick, suffocating blend of smoke from the lamps, the fetid odor of unwashed men, and the constant, lung-searing dust from the drilling and blasting. The work pace never slackened. The Big Four demanded 2 feet of progress per day in the rock. The only way to achieve this was through a horrifying, experimental method that elevated the risk to suicidal levels: nitroglycerin. By 1866, the primary explosive had been black powder, effective but slow. Nitroglycerin, a new, volatile, and shockingly powerful explosive, was introduced, custom-made on-site by a secretive Swedish engineer who himself seemed perpetually on the edge of a nervous breakdown. Nitroglycerin was unstable. A hard jar, a rapid change in temperature, or a simple misplaced hammer blow could detonate it. Ah Ling was now working deep inside the Summit Tunnel. He was one of the trusted drillers, but his hands trembled when the nitro was brought in. The technique was called mucking and drilling. A shift of men would drill the holes. The nitro would be placed, the fuse would be lit, and the workers would run, scrambling through the narrow, unventilated bore to relative safety. After the blast, before the dust and choking nitrogen oxide fumes could settle, the muckers, Chinese men armed with shovels and wheelbarrows, were forced back in to clear the newly blasted rock. "The air! Ah Ling, it burns!" a young mucker screamed one day, collapsing in the darkness. The nitro fumes were worse than any powder smoke, causing blinding headaches and a searing pain in the chest. Many men would spit up blood for days after a heavy blast. The work was a race against time and death. They did not only work from the ends of the tunnel. In a breathtaking feat of engineering desperation, Crocker had ordered a shaft be dug down 125 feet through solid granite to the center of the tunnel's path. Men and mules were lowered into this hole on a rickety steam-powered elevator, and the drilling began from the inside out, creating 4 working faces instead of 2. The center shaft was a vision of hell. The smoke could not escape the deep pit. It swirled, a poisonous, blinding fog that clung to every worker. One day, a hoist cable snapped. Not only was the steam boiler operator, a white man, killed, but the cable itself scythed through the darkness below, decapitating one mucker and severing the legs of 2 others. Ling was standing 10 feet away, and the spray of blood on the cold granite was instantly frozen in his memory. Through that brutal winter, the death toll mounted. Hundreds of Chinese men perished. They died from accidents, crushed by rockfalls, mutilated by premature nitroblasts, or swept away by the inevitable snowslides. But they also died of the conditions: pneumonia, consumption from the lung-scarring dust, and the slow poison of the fumes. The official CP reports listed the deaths as accidental or illness, a neat erasure. The true count was suppressed. The CP, ever cautious about the public image of their celestials, arranged for the bodies to be boiled down and cremated, their bones packed neatly into wooden boxes and shipped back across the Pacific. A final, silent journey home. This was the only acknowledgement of their humanity, a concession to the Chinese tradition that was simultaneously a corporate cover-up. When the summit tunnel finally broke through in the late summer of 1867, the white press celebrated the triumph of American ingenuity. They hailed the power of steam and the brilliance of the Big Four. There were no photographs of Ling or Wang, no mention of the thousands of men who had lived for a year in the subterranean darkness. The tunnel, that monumental granite-hewn tomb, was simply a hole in the mountain, and the men who carved it were ghosts already. The CPRR had just conquered the worst natural barrier, but the human cost was staggering, and the trail of iron now stretched to a new desolate horizon, the deserts of Nevada, where the real race and the final astonishing chapter of the Big Four's greed was about to begin.